Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always ready to dive in.
Today, we're going to be looking at something I think we've all encountered at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Relationship red flags.
Everyone's familiar.
Yeah. You know those little warning signs that pop up early on?
Right.
The ones we sometimes try to ignore, but
Yeah.
we're going to unpack a bunch of research and articles that you sent over
Okay.
all about recognizing those red flags
Yeah.
so we can make healthier choices in our relationships.
What I think is so interesting is how often we actually kind of feel those red flags in our gut.
Yeah.
But we're so good at second-guessing ourselves.
Yeah.
This deep dive is about tuning into that inner voice and understanding why certain patterns
Right.
are so harmful and how we can gain the confidence to actually act on what we know
Yeah.
deep down.
It's like that sinking feeling you get, but then you're like, oh, maybe I'm just being traumatic.
Yeah,
But our gut feelings are often smarter than we give them credit for.
absolutely.
So let's just jump right in. One of the most common red flags that kept popping up in these articles is lack of communication.
Right.
Now, I know everyone communicates differently, but
Right.
I'm talking about these consistent patterns.
Yeah.
Like always being the one to reach out or to plan things.
Yeah.
Or to like pour your heart out only to get crickets in return.
Yeah, healthy communication is such a balance of give and take.
Right.
And it's about knowing comfortable, sharing your thoughts and feelings, knowing you'll be heard and respected.
Yes.
And I think if you consistently feel like you're talking to a brick wall, or if you have to practically beg for a text back,
Right.
that's a huge red flag.
It's not just about being ignored, though, right?
No.
One of the articles was pointing out that sometimes poor communication shows up as avoiding those tough conversations.
Yes.
Like if you bring up something that's bothering you and your partner just shuts down
Yeah.
or changes the subject every time.
Yeah.
It's like they're allergic to.
Any real depth.
Yeah.
That's a really important point because it suggests that this person may not actually be ready
Right.
or willing to truly connect
Right.
on a deeper level. And they might be emotionally unavailable, which we'll dive into later, or they might have a fear of conflict,
Yes.
which can be just as damaging to a relationship.
It's almost like they're emotionally stunted in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of avoiding responsibility, another red flag that kept screaming at me from these articles
Yeah.
was blame shifting.
Oh, tell me about it.
That whole
Classic.
it's not me, it's you kind of attitude.
It's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating even reading about it.
Yeah, because it completely shuts down any possibility of growth or change.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If someone's constantly blaming you for their actions,
Yeah.
they're never going to learn from their mistakes. They're never going to be accountable for their behavior.
And then what happens?
Resentment builds, and the relationship just becomes a breeding ground for negativity.
It's true. The articles even had this whole section
Oh, really?
on like those classic blame shifting phrases like, well, I wouldn't have to yell if you weren't always late.
Yeah.
or my favorite is always, you made me do this.
Oh, come on.
It's like, seriously? It's almost comical
Yeah.
how predictable it can be. But
Right.
like you said, it's not funny when you're on the receiving end of that.
Right.
It really wears down your self-esteem.
It does.
And it makes you question your own sanity.
Absolutely. Imagine constantly feeling like you're walking on eggshells, terrified of saying you're doing the wrong thing
Oh, yeah.
because, it'll be used against you.
Right.
That kind of environment is toxic
Yes.
and unsustainable.
Okay, so moving on to a red flag that I think is particularly sneaky
Okay.
and damaging, gaslighting.
Gaslighting, yeah.
It's a form of manipulation that
Right.
makes you question your own reality and perceptions.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people might not even realize they're experiencing it because it can be so subtle at first.
It's often insidious. It
Yeah.
starts with small things like dismissing your feelings, telling you you're overreacting, or flat out denying things
Right.
that, happened.
Yes.
It's a very deliberate tactic to make you doubt yourself and your sanity.
Some of the examples in these articles are just chilling.
Oh, really?
Like
What?
things like, you're being too sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
That never happened. Or you're imagining things.
It's classic.
It's like they're trying to erase your reality
Right.
and replace it with their own twisted version.
And the scariest part is that it can be incredibly effective over time.
Right.
Gaslighting can erode your sense of self-worth
Yeah.
and your ability to trust your own judgment.
Yes.
And you start to second-guess yourself constantly, wondering if you really are crazy, like they're making you feel.
The experts in all of these articles were really strong on this point.
Okay.
If you feel like you're being gaslighted, trust your instincts.
That's
Yeah. Don't let anyone invalidate your feelings or experiences.
You know yourself better than anyone else
Right.
if something feels wrong.
It probably is.
It probably is.
And you deserve to be in a relationship where your thoughts and feelings are valued, not twisted and manipulated.
Absolutely.
So let's recap. We've got lack of communication,
Okay.
blame shifting, and gaslighting.
Yeah.
Are you noticing a theme here?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of these red flags are about, like, a lack of respect and a lack of willingness to see things from the other person's perspective.
You're absolutely right. It's all about those power dynamics.
Right.
And about one person trying to control the narrative
Yes.
while the other person feels increasingly diminished and heard.
Right.
And that brings us to another big red flag.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can practically draw a straight line from gaslighting to a lack of respect.
Exactly.
This one might seem obvious.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that respect is really the foundation of any healthy relationship.
For sure.
And it can show up in so many sneaky ways.
Yeah. The articles really highlight some common forms of disrespect.
Yeah.
Content interrupting,
Yeah.
belittling your opinions, making jokes at your expense,
Yeah.
dismissing your feelings, violating your boundaries.
Right.
It's all about making you feel small and insignificant.
It's a slow chipping away at your sense of self.
It is.
And you start to question, like, whether you deserve better.
Right.
Because they've convinced you that you're too sensitive or overreacting.
Exactly.
So what if someone is showing some of these red flags, but they're also showering you with gifts or grand gestures of love? Is that enough?
That's a great question, and I think it speaks to a deeper issue that we often see in relationships, and it's the tendency to confuse grand gestures with genuine love and respect.
Yes. Let's dive into that a little bit more in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really important distinction to make.
Sure.
But before we do, I want to touch on one more red flag that came up consistently in the research: emotional unavailability.
Oh, yeah.
And this one can be particularly painful.
It is.
Because you're often left feeling lonely and unfulfilled, even if you're in a relationship.
It's that feeling of being with someone, but still feeling utterly alone.
Yeah.
Because genuine connection requires emotional intimacy.
Right.
A willingness to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And share your inner world with another person.
Yes.
And when someone's emotionally unavailable, they might be physically present.
Right.
But their heart is a million miles away.
I've heard it described as dating a ghost, which I think is such an accurate metaphor, because it's like...
You can see them.
You can see them.
But you can't touch them.
You can't truly touch them or connect with them on a soul level.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a house on sand.
Right.
There's no solid foundation.
Right.
So no matter how much effort you put in the structure will inevitably crumble.
It's a heartbreaking situation to be in.
It is.
And unfortunately, it's more common than we'd like to think.
Right.
So how can someone tell if they're dealing with emotional unavailability in their partner?
That's a great question.
What are some of the signs?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one we should definitely explore further.
Okay.
But I think for now, the key takeaway is that you can't force someone to be emotionally available.
Right.
It's an internal process that they have to be willing to undertake themselves.
So if you're constantly feeling like you're pulling teeth just to get them to open up,
Yeah.
or if you feel like you're always giving more than you're receiving emotionally,
Yeah.
those are some pretty strong indicators
They are.
of emotional unavailability.
And remember, you deserve to be with someone who wants to meet you halfway,
Right.
who's excited to share their heart with you,
Yes.
and who's willing to put in the effort to create a deep and meaningful connection.
Beautifully said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about lack of communication, blame shifting, gaslighting, lack of respect,
Yep.
and emotional unavailability.
Lots of red flags.
That's a pretty heavy load of red flags.
Right.
But I think it's important to be aware of them
Absolutely.
so we can make more informed choices
For sure.
in our relationships.
Knowledge is power.
Yes.
The more we understand these patterns, the better equipped we are to avoid them or address them if they arise.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into these red flags.
Okay.
Explore some practical strategies for dealing with them.
Great.
And talk about what to do if you find yourself facing any of these challenges
Yeah.
in your own relationship.
We'll also discuss those encouraging green flags that you mentioned,
Right.
the signs of a healthy and thriving relationship.
Because it's not just about avoiding the bad, it's about actively seeking out the good.
Absolutely.
But for now, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts?
No.
Are any of these red flags resonating with your own experiences?
Yeah, let us know.
We'd love to hear what's standing out to you so far.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how intertwined all of those red flags can be.
It is.
Like, emotional unavailability can easily lead to communication breakdowns.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier, like, how fear of conflict can be just as damaging as avoiding those tough conversations altogether.
It's like they're all part of the same dysfunctional family,
Yes.
feeding off of each other and creating this tangled web of unhealthy dynamics.
Exactly. Okay, but let's get practical.
Okay.
You've spotted some red flags in your relationship. Now what?
Right.
Do you, like, bolt at the first sign of trouble?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember, everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
And sometimes these issues can stem from misunderstandings
Right.
or a lack of self-awareness.
Okay.
The articles really emphasize direct and honest communication as that first step.
So even when the problem is communication,
Right.
the solution is more communication.
Precisely.
Okay.
If you're feeling unheard or if your partner consistently isn't making an effort,
Right.
express that clearly and calmly. Explain how their actions are making you feel,
Hmm.
and remember to use I statements.
Right.
So you're not putting them on the defensive.
It's like saying, I feel hurt when I'm constantly the one initiating contact.
Right.
Rather than, you never text me back, you obviously don't care.
Exactly. That subtle shift in language
Right.
can make a world of difference.
Yeah.
It invites your partner to understand your perspective rather than feeling attacked.
Right.
And speaking of protecting yourself, the articles also stressed setting clear boundaries.
Oh, boundaries are huge.
Huge.
Right. Whether it's about how often you communicate, respecting each other's time, or navigating jealousy, like, having those boundaries in place is crucial.
Absolutely. Boundaries are essentially about respecting yourself and what you're willing to tolerate.
Right.
And if those boundaries are repeatedly crossed, that's a major sign that something needs to shift
Okay.
in the relationship.
That makes sense. So what happens when you try to communicate those needs or those boundaries and your partner just shuts down,
Yeah.
gets defensive, or blames you for everything?
That's a tough situation, and unfortunately, it's a sign that they might not be willing to do the work
Right.
required to build a healthier dynamic.
Yeah.
The research consistently highlighted this. Pay close attention to how your partner responds
Right.
when you try to address these issues.
So if they refuse to take any responsibility or make you feel like you're crazy for even bringing it up, that's a big red flag that things might not change.
I'm afraid so. A lot of the experts cautioned against falling into the trap
Yes.
of trying to fix your partner.
Right.
It's a noble intention,
Yeah.
but ultimately you can't change someone who isn't ready or willing to change themselves.
It's so tempting, though, especially if you're someone who's naturally caring and empathetic.
Oh, it is.
You want to believe that with enough love and patience,
Right.
they'll magically transform into, like, the partner of your dreams.
It's a common fantasy, but it's rarely rooted in reality.
Right.
Remember, the only person you have control over is yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes the kindest and bravest thing you can do is recognize when a relationship isn't serving you
Yeah.
and choose to walk away.
That's such a hard thing to do, though, especially if you still have feelings for this person.
Right.
But the articles, I think, made a really good point. Like, staying in that toxic situation
Right.
will only cause more pain in the long run.
And it prevents you from finding a relationship that truly fulfills you.
Right.
Sometimes letting go is the most loving act,
Right.
both for yourself and for the other person.
Yes.
It allows both of you to move on and find happiness elsewhere.
I know our listener might be thinking, like, but what if they promise to change?
Yeah.
What if I still love them?
Yeah.
Those are really tough feelings to navigate.
Absolutely. The articles acknowledged the power of those feelings.
Yeah.
And they offered some really wise advice. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
Look for consistent patterns of behavior over time.
Right.
Not just isolated incidents or promises made in the heat of the moment.
One of the articles had this analogy.
Oh, really?
I thought it was really good.
Okay.
Imagine a garden. If you keep planting seeds in toxic soil, nothing beautiful will grow.
Wow.
No matter how much you water or fertilize it.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And it highlights the fact that while we can't control other people's behavior,
Right.
we can choose the environment where we allow ourselves to flourish.
So in essence, we have a responsibility to nurture ourselves and choose relationships that support our growth, not those that stunt it.
Absolutely.
So I guess the big question is this: what are we actually supposed to do with all of this information?
Right.
If we're facing these red flags in our relationship, where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question, and I think it really depends
Yeah.
on a lot of factors.
Right.
The severity of the issues, the willingness of both partners to change,
Yeah.
the overall dynamic of the relationship,
Okay.
The research suggests a few different approaches.
Like what?
First, if the red flags are relatively minor and you feel safe communicating your concerns,
Right.
couples counseling can be a great option.
Okay.
It provides a neutral space
Yeah.
for both partners to express their needs and work toward creating a healthier dynamic.
That makes sense. Having like a mediator can help facilitate those productive conversations.
For sure.
Especially if communication has been a major issue in the relationship.
Exactly. And even if you ultimately decide to end the relationship,
Yeah.
counseling can help you navigate that process
Right.
with more clarity and compassion.
Okay, what about situations where those red flags are more serious?
Right.
Dealing with gaslighting or emotional abuse.
Those situations require a different approach.
Right.
It's crucial to prioritize your safety and well-being. Reaching out to a therapist or a domestic violence hotline
Yeah.
can provide support, guidance, and resources for creating a safety plan.
Yeah, it's so important to remember that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
And there are people who can help you navigate those really difficult situations.
For sure.
Sometimes just talking to someone who understands what you're going through
Right.
can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. And remember, leaving an abusive relationship is a process, not a one-time event.
Yes.
It takes courage, strength, and support.
So we've covered a lot of heavy stuff in this part of the deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about how to address red flags, the importance of setting boundaries,
Right.
the challenges of trying to change someone,
Mm-hmm.
and that crucial need for self-care and support.
It's a lot.
It can feel overwhelming, but I kind of want to shift gears a bit and talk about something we touched on earlier
Okay.
that I found really hopeful and inspiring.
I'm intrigued. What's that?
Green flags.
Green flags.
Okay. The positive signs of a healthy and thriving relationship.
Right, right.
You know those things that tell us we're on the right track?
Mm-hmm.
That we found someone who truly sees us, respects us, and supports us.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the negativity
Yeah.
of red flags.
Right.
But focusing on those positive qualities
Yeah.
can remind us of what we deserve and help us make more conscious choices.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond simply avoiding the bad and actively seeking out the good.
Absolutely.
So what are some of those green flags? What should we be looking for?
Well, the research highlighted a few key green flags.
Okay.
And I think one of the most important is mutual respect.
Oh, for sure.
It's the foundation of any healthy relationship.
Absolutely. It's about valuing each other's opinions even when you disagree.
Right.
And treating each other with kindness and consideration even during arguments.
Right.
It's about feeling safe to be your authentic self without fear of judgment.
Exactly. Another green flag is open and honest communication.
I love that.
It's about feeling comfortable sharing your thoughts and feelings
Yeah.
without fear of rejection or retaliation.
Right.
It's about being a good listener, truly hearing and trying to understand your partner's perspective,
Yes.
even if you don't agree with it.
I love that. It's like creating a safe space
It is.
for vulnerability and authenticity.
Exactly.
You know, you can truly be yourself with this person and they'll accept you
Right.
for who you are, flaws and all.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
The research also pointed to a sense of partnership
Okay.
as a strong green flag.
What exactly does that mean?
It's about feeling like you're on the same team,
Oh, okay.
working together to navigate life's challenges
Okay.
and celebrate its joys.
Yeah.
It's about feeling supported and encouraged by your partner,
Yes.
knowing they have your back no matter what.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yeah.
If you want to go far, go together.
Right.
You know? A healthy relationship is about that shared journey, that
Mhm.
feeling of moving forward together as a team.
Precisely. It's about feeling like you're both rowing the boat in the same direction,
Right.
even when the waters get rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
The articles also highlighted the importance of shared values and goals.
You mean like things like whether you want to have children, where you want to live,
Exactly.
or how you approach finances?
Exactly. While it's perfectly normal to have some differences,
Right.
having those fundamental values in alignment
Yeah.
can make for a much smoother and more harmonious journey.
It's like being on the same page about the big picture stuff, the
Oh.
things that really matter in the long run.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about another crucial green flag. Fun.
Oh, yeah.
Relationships should be enjoyable.
Absolutely. Do you laugh together? Do you
Mhm.
enjoy spending time together? Do you make each other smile?
Yeah.
These are all important indicators of a healthy and happy connection.
It's about feeling light and joyful in each other's presence.
Yeah.
Like you can truly let your guard down and be your goofy, playful self.
Exactly. Life is too short to be in a relationship that feels like a chore.
Yes.
So while it's essential to be aware of those red flags,
Right.
it's equally important to celebrate those green flags
Yeah.
that signal a relationship built on love, respect, and mutual growth.
This has been such an insightful journey so far.
It has.
We've explored the shadows with those red flags and discovered the light with those encouraging green flags.
We have.
What do you think? Are we ready for part 3? Ready when you are? I bet our listener is eager to put all this red flag, green flag knowledge into practice.
I agree. So let's shift our focus to what we can actually do to create those healthy relationships we're all looking for. What stood out to me from all these articles was the emphasis on self-awareness.
Yeah, makes sense. If you don't know what you want or need in a relationship, how can you expect to find it with someone else?
It's like going on a road trip without a map or a destination in mind.
Right.
You might end up somewhere interesting, but you're also likely to get lost along the way.
Yeah.
The research suggests taking some time to reflect on your past relationships.
Okay.
What worked well, what went wrong,
right,
and any patterns that you might be repeating.
One article called it a relationship inventory.
Ooh.
I love that.
I like that.
It's like before you go shopping for a new partner,
Right.
you need to take stock of what's already in your emotional pantry.
That's a great analogy. What are your non-negotiables?
Right.
What are those qualities and values that are absolutely essential
Right.
for you to feel loved and respected? Once you have that clarity, you can start making more conscious choices
Yeah.
about who you let into your life.
The articles also talk about the importance of not rushing into things.
Oh, for sure.
It's so easy to get swept up in the excitement of a new connection.
Yeah.
But taking your time can save you a lot of heartache down the road.
It's about pacing yourself, allowing the relationship to unfold organically, and paying attention to how you feel.
Right.
When you're with this person, are you truly yourself around them?
Yeah.
Do they bring out the best in you?
One article suggested having this like trust building phase. I thought it was really smart. It's not about being suspicious or anything. It's just about giving the relationship time to develop that solid foundation.
It's like building a house. You don't just slap on the roof before you lay the foundation.
Right.
You take the time to create a strong base that can withstand the storms that life inevitably throws your way.
Speaking of support, the articles also encouraged reaching out to trusted friends or family members, or even a therapist if you're struggling with relationship issues.
It's so important to remember that you don't have to go through this alone.
Right.
There are so many resources available to help you navigate the complexities of relationships and create those loving connections you deserve.
Sometimes it's so hard to see things clearly when you're like in the thick of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Having that outside perspective can really help you gain clarity.
For sure.
And make more informed decisions.
It's like having a guide in unfamiliar territory.
Right.
That can help you navigate those twists and turns, spot potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
And remind you of your worth when you start to doubt yourself.
It's so important to remember that you don't have to go through this alone.
Yeah.
There are so many resources available to help you navigate the complexities of relationships and create the loving connections that you deserve.
You got this.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a few final thoughts.
Okay.
First, trust your gut.
Yeah.
You know yourself better than anyone else.
Right.
If something feels off, don't ignore those red flags.
Listen to your intuition.
Second, remember that you deserve to be in a relationship where you feel safe, respected, and loved.
Absolutely.
Don't settle for anything less.
Don't.
And finally, know that you have the power to create the kind of love life that you desire.
You do.
By being self-aware, setting boundaries, and communicating your needs, you can build relationships that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Absolutely.
This has been such a fascinating exploration of relationship dynamics.
It really has.
We went from those common red flags to the encouraging green flags.
Right.
And now we have some really practical steps for putting all this knowledge into action.
I hope our listener feels empowered to create healthier and happier relationships.
Me too.
And remember, every experience, even the challenging ones, offer valuable lessons that can lead us toward the love we deserve.
So true. Now, as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
It's something that came up in a few of the articles, and it really resonated with me.
Okay.
What are some seemingly insignificant behaviors that might actually be early warning signs of those bigger red flags that we discussed?
It's about paying attention to those subtle cues.
Right.
Those little things that might seem harmless on their own, but could indicate a deeper pattern.
Because sometimes those tiny red flags, if left unchecked, can grow into something much bigger and more damaging down the road.
Exactly. So trust your intuition.
Yes.
Stay curious and never stop learning and growing in the realm of relationships.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Remember, you are worthy of a love that feels good and safe, not one that keeps you walking on eggshells. Until next time, happy exploring.